I think all of us need to work on one skill, and that skill is how we present the housing market to our community via social media, via YouTube, via our email databases. We need to all get better at this. So let's dive into some of the skills of how to do this. So I wrote down in my notes the do's and the don'ts. And I'm looking at my notes right now, and I've got, looks like 12 points for us to cover on this thing. So let's dive in. But let's start with question number one, which is how important is it for us to learn how to explain real estate housing market? This is such an important question. See, for me, this is one of the critical things a real estate professional gets to do. We get the amazing opportunity to study the housing market. Now, why is that important? See, it dawned on me in 2006 when, my father actually was on stage at a huge real estate event in front of 3,000 real estate agents in 2006. He said to the audience, "The real estate market is turning right now." And now, 2006, we're at a peak, and this was wild, and everyone was making more money, and then the market slowly started to dive. I also, at that same time, read an economic report from one of my main mentors, Mr. Bruce Norris of the Norris Group, and it said the California crash, and it actually outlined all of the economic factors as to why California's median sales price was going to go down by 50%. So, as a young man in 2005, when I saw that, and then I heard my dad say that, and then I saw the entire real estate world fall apart, two things happened. Number one, a lot of people lost a lot of money from 2006 moving forward. And at the same time, a lot of people from 2010, 11, 12, and at the bottom of the market, they gained a huge amount of wealth. Then, as we saw over the last 10 years, from 2010 to 2020, 2011 to 2021, we've seen a lot of people regain a lot of wealth through the housing market. So, my friends, for my veterans who've kind of avoided the topic, for my new agents who are really looking at this topic and it looks like a huge mountain to climb, I want to inspire you guys. There's so much wealth to be gained in the understanding of real estate housing markets. So, listen, therefore, I think, just for your own personal motivation, I think this is such a great topic for you to start practicing, start learning, start digging in. Don't do this because you think you're going to get another deal because you covered a market update. Do this so that you can up your game as a real estate advisor, as someone who can also look at the market and figure out how to gain wealth for you and your family, and then also to give quality, good advice to your friends, your past clients, and your sphere. So let's dive into some of the do's and some of the don'ts for your housing market reports. All right, question number one that I think is probably critical to ask, which is how often should we give a housing market report? So let's take a look at number one, weekly. Do, don't. My response is, no weekly, okay? Now, did I do weekly during the pandemic crisis? Yes, because I actually thought it was interesting to watch the housing market weekly during the pandemic. And I love what Tom did with Keeping Current Matters and David Childers when they were doing This Week in Housing during the pandemic was so helpful. But here we are. The market has been unbelievably on fire since May and June of 2020 into May and June or July now of 2021. So it's kind of lost, that weekly's lost its kind of flavor. So do I recommend weekly? Not really. I think there's other things we'll address. So let's keep going. Number two, monthly. Should you cover the housing market monthly? I don't know. It's still kind of boring, to be honest. And the truth is, does anything change monthly, really? Hey, this month there's, 2 more listings than there was last month. There's 1 more sale than there was the previous month. Okay, shout out to my good buddy Jim Bishop in my mastermind group. He has been tracking inventory and listings and escrows and pendings, in his market for like years, monthly. But I think when he talks to us and he shows us kind of broader monthly changes, that's when it's actually super interesting. So that leads me to number 3, which is quarterly. Should we be doing a housing market report quarterly? Absolutely yes. Now, I love what Keeping Current Matters does, where they do it seasonally. Does that make a little bit easier for the average consumer? Absolutely yes, right? Winter, spring, summer, fall, right? Which coincides with the quarter. So should we all be doing something and really working on the skill and our presentation for quarterly and seasonally? Bingo, absolutely, I agree. Now, should we do mid-year? Should we do at the mid-year mark? Of course we should. Why is that important? Because if you really look at traditional economic data, how do they know that we're in a recession, right? We're in a recession when they look back and they go in 2 quarters, i.e., 6 months, i.e. mid-year, when they look back in a 6-month window and they see that the growth has actually stagnated, that's how they ring the bell and say we're in a recession. So as real estate professionals, should we develop the ability to give a, a twice a year, mid-year, report? Of course. Now, annually, next, should you be doing a end of year, here's what happened in real estate report? Of course you should be doing that. That's an absolute no-brainer. And the good news for all of us, is kind of as we wind down the year in December and we're looking at January, it's great to reflect and to kind of do that at the end of the year. It's usually when our markets are the slowest, and it's a great opportunity for you to really elevate your brand as an expert and as an authority, and also to self-reflect on what happened last year in the real estate housing market. So, and then of course, for my brave souls out there, should you do a prediction into the future to say, hey, my prediction of 2022 is, and here's why? Well, if you're brave and if you're well studied and researched, I absolutely think you should do that. I think it's very fun for you to do that. And, my great mentor, Mr. Bruce Norris, he does these prediction and forecast every other year, and he owns up when he misses the mark on something. And he learns from that and he adds it into the next year's prediction. Hey, I didn't realize this thing was going to happen, and so my prediction is off. And there's some humility to that, and it's beautiful, right? And so it's fun. So anyways, there you guys go. Let's go on to the next thing, which is, well, Patrick, if I'm not doing weekly and I'm not doing monthly and I'm just doing quarterly and seasonally and mid-year and annual, and maybe a prediction, well, what else am I supposed to do? Well, this is where we're going to fill in the gaps where you can do a lot more. So I wrote down big consumer questions and trends in the media. So big consumer questions, yes. Trends in the media, yes. See, this is where we can actually be doing way more housing market reports or updates, or addressing kind of what the consumer is thinking about, what they're concerned by, the questions that they have in the marketplace, plus what's being called out in the media. So I'm going to grab my notes here. So a quick example of that is, this big topic we just dealt with the COVID and with the pandemic. There were so many questions in that. And a quick example of that was, will forbearances create foreclosures? So, my friends, Tom and Keeping Current Matters and David Childers, they were addressing that question nonstop to us real estate agents, helping us to address that question to the consumer. See, that's a perfect example of a question or a media trend that we could have all addressed. Okay, if you haven't seen this, guys, on YouTube, if you look at people's YouTube channels and you see the videos that have the highest view counts, what is one of the titles you see? Will the market crash in 2021? So here's a question the consumers have. Here's a constantly in the media, this thing about housing market crash. So if you address that, hey, do you see the housing market? Will it crash? Here's the 5 things I'm looking at. Here's the 2 things I'm looking at. Here's the reasons why I think it won't. Here's the reasons why I may think it will. Here's the things that I am paying close attention to. Guys, let's address that stuff, right? And address that to our audience. Next thing I wrote down are, this is a big one. This is where we can kind of fill in the gaps. See, if you're having a lot of conversations with buyers, you should notice that buyers will ask you the same kind of common questions. Hey, what do you think's going to happen with? Hey, we're wondering about, should we wait? What do you think? Will prices, will inventory, will this occur? And I want you to be empowered that as you're talking to a lot of buyers and you're fielding the same question over and over again, then that's the signal for you to go do some research, go talk to 2 or 3 brokers, go take a look at your board and whoever the chief economist there, see what Keeping Current Matters is doing, see what Tom's saying, talk to your coach and see how they're answering it, and then accumulate some of that information and then go deliver your video to all of your buyers and say, hey buyers, the big trend that I'm getting right now from buyers in today's market is in the summer of 2021 is this question, and then answer it as part of your housing market report. Same thing on the seller side. So top listing agents, as you're getting questions, the same question from these same sellers over and over again, do the same thing. So I think that allows you guys to kind of fill in the gaps. We could be doing a housing market report very often when we are really tying into consumer questions, the media trends, plus our quarterly, plus our seasonally, our mid-year, our annual. And that should help us out a lot. All right, so let's go to the next major point that I wrote down, which is all about stats. So my friends, we need to talk about stats, okay? Because I think a lot of real estate agents, we really have a tough time with stats, okay? And I get it, it makes sense. So please, should you just be sharing stats? No. Don't. Stats, here's what I wrote down. Stats are designed to validate a trend that you want to point out. The stat is not the story. You need to tell the story and then use the stat to validate it. See, that's a better way to approach this. Now, next thing I wrote down is, can you teach your community why you are following a stat trend and why that stat trend is actually something to pay attention to? Yes. See, one of my great mentors, Mr. Bruce Norris, he actually taught me and all of his community. He taught us about the stat of affordability. And he would over and over the last 10, 15 years that I've been following him, he would explain why he liked that stat. And then he basically said, this is why this stat is important. And he'd show the historical reasons why. And then he started seeing all the variations and he would unpack that stat to all of us who were his followers. And that was very powerful. See, so I really recommend that if you're following a couple stats, let me give you an example of some stats that I really like right now, which I like list to sold price ratio. I think that's a really interesting stat to follow. And I think, over the last couple of years, that list to sold price ratio has been moving dramatically. So for some of my friends in some of the kind of maybe a Midwest market where, you were like, 92% of list to sold price ratio. And here you are now in this kind of low inventory environment, and now you're like 98% list to sold price ratio. That's a huge shift. Now, the explanation of that stat and why you're following that stat is really interesting. Okay? List to price sold ratio, days on market, and inventory. I think those are fascinating stats to follow. And I would love to explain that to all of my community as to why I'm following those, and then continue to bring those into the conversation of the trends and what's going on. So a quick example of that is so many of my friends, the common kind of will the market crash question would always come up, right, amongst my friends in my community and some of my agent, coaching clients. And so I would always have to point back to one of the stats called inventory levels. And I'd say, hey guys, inventory levels. See, if you can explain to me why you think inventory levels are going to dramatically increase, then that would then validate why you would think the housing market's going to crash. Let me explain. And I would explain that, low inventory will always keep, with a reasonable demand, keep prices moving in an upward trajectory. And so I would constantly be talking about inventory levels as a part of the answer to the main question. So this is an example of why there's a few stats that you need to really kind of get ownership around and really understand that you believe help you explain the housing market and to deal with some of the big questions and concerns and that you think are going to be major influencers. Okay, so let's go to the next question that I put down here. Should we be covering month over month? Like, well, last month in May to this month in June. Honestly, I don't see the value in that, right? Because, if we really look at, the real estate market's very cyclical anyway. So it's like last May to last year in May, maybe, but it's still not that interesting, right? So I'd be very careful with month over month, May to June, June to July. Like, what happened to inventory levels from, April to May, and then May to June, and June to, who cares, really? Now, if we looked at the quarter and you saw a trend happen in a quarter, and then you saw a trend happen within the second quarter, yeah, that's super interesting. So watching it month over month and then seeing the trend over a quarter and then a trend over, mid-year, now we're talking. This is serious stuff. But be careful with that month to month. All right, let's go to the next thing here on my list, okay? Hope you guys are staying with me on this. I know this is not the most glamorous and fun topic, but let's keep going. Major thing, number one, talking about your feelings. I have a feeling the market's turning right now. No feeling conversations in housing market. Okay, please hold that back. It's my favorite when I get when one of my coaching guys, I think the market's turning right now. And I'm like, okay, tell me why. I just have a feeling. What are you talking about? Where I just want to make sure you guys know this. Like, please, don't do that. When you're talking about the economy, when you're talking about the market, feelings are not the thing to reference. Okay. All right. Next one I wrote down is absolutely yes, though. I want you to tell stories about client scenarios and case studies. Yes. So if you said, hey, if you actually said something like, hey, I listed a property the other day and I was surprised when it's like kind of an average property and it got 5 offers, and I was able to negotiate the property over list price, which I was kind of expecting that I would sell maybe a little bit below list price, and I actually sold it over list price. Now, yes, that's a case study, that's a scenario. Then can you add a stat to validate why that's occurring? So when I was really looking at it, it makes sense to me, because when I looked at last month's inventory or this month's inventory, the inventory is super low. When I look at, the number of days on market, it's super low. When I look at the list to sold ratio, it's really trending up. Sure, show me a stat to validate a case study scenario. Yes, yes, yes. I really wish that we would all tell more stories. And then inside the story, there's the principles about the housing market that you want to deliver, and then using a stat to kind of validate your authority perception and your wisdom. See, that to me is a big, big yes. Okay. Next that I wrote down is making projections about interest rates. I think the interest rates are going to go up. I think they're going to go down. I think they're going to go. Guys, stop. Stop, 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 stop. Let me say it again. Making projection about interest rates. Stop. I don't know about you guys, but I've been studying this thing intensely, and I have zero clue if it's going up or if it's going down. Zero. I just have no idea. And everybody I talk to has no idea. So I have kind of leaned on, by the way, Doug Duncan, who is one of the top 100 most influential people, by Forbes magazine, who also is the chief economic officer for, I think, Fannie Mae. So I just look at what he says, by the way, because if he says, hey, I expect interest rates to stay here, then I just go, cool, Doug Duncan says, and that's it. But I hear way too many real estate agents with literally no understanding of interest rates, making statements about interest rates. And as far as I can tell, I still don't even understand. I still couldn't even tell you what a projection is, or how to even come to a conclusion of a projection. So please be careful with that. That leads me to the next point, which I wrote down, is doing housing market or market reports where you're giving reasons why a buyer should do something, or a reason why a seller should do something. Please do not do that. Okay? When we're talking about the housing market, please don't use a stat to tell someone to do something. I don't think that is in anyone's best interest. Now, you can say, there is an advantage that is available to buyers who take advantage of this, and here's what it is. There's an advantage to sellers who take advantage of this, and here's what it is. And so, if you'd like to discuss with me how this advantage could play out for you and make a great result for you and your family, let's do that. But don't use a stat to tell people to do something. I don't recommend that. Next is this is my favorite, making statements like, the market is hot, 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 hot. Please, 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 please do not make that statement, especially if you're in a market like mine, where I have a ton of engineers in San Diego, California. They will literally look at you like you are a moron. Because the market is hot doesn't mean anything to anyone. What are you talking about? So watch those adjectives. Get rid of them out of your marketing, of your language. It doesn't make any sense. Okay, so please watch that. That's a no, no, no. Now, we're wrapping up here. So should you give buyers some advice, or here's some opportunities, here's the concerns, here's the things we should be discussing based upon the housing market, based upon the trends, based upon, what's going on? Yes, right? Hey buyers, based upon what we're seeing, based upon list to sold price ratio, based upon days on market, based upon year over year, what we're seeing with pricing, based upon what we're seeing with, multiple offer scenarios. Hey buyers, here's what we should be discussing. Here's some of the things you need to be aware of. Here's some of the things you need to be prepared for. Let's discuss that. Hey sellers, based upon what we're seeing with pricing, based upon what we're seeing with days on market, list to sold price, based upon what we're seeing with projections on the housing market, based upon what we're seeing anecdotally in the marketplace, here's some of the things we should be discussing. Here's some of the things that you should probably be paying attention to. Here's some of the stats you should probably be following. Here's the things that I'd like to be sharing with you and discussing with you. Guys, please separate the conversation. Hey buyers, hey sellers, here we go. Here we go. Don't do general blanket statements, guys. That's a terrible idea. Last thing, besides talking about promotion, we'll do one more here, and that is make an offer to discuss these things with any potential buyers. Hey, if you're a buyer in today's market and you've been wondering about this, you really want to learn more, you want to understand how this will work for you, how it could potentially affect you, let's have a conversation. Let me take you through my consultation and let's break this down for you specifically, and I'd love to do that. Hey sellers, if you're wondering how this will influence you, the value of your home, what the potential risks are, what, how you could take advantage of this opportunity, give me a call and let's discuss this separately. So make consultation and conversation offers both to the buyers and to the sellers at the end of every single one of your housing market videos. Bing. Last thing is promotion. If you stuck with me, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Make sure you give me a high five. Tell me which one was the most important to you. Last thing is just promotion, guys. And I want to make sure that this is super crystal clear. For this conversation of housing market versus market update, these terms are very different. So what I figured out when I did a bunch of SEO research and I did a bunch of YouTube research, the term market update doesn't make any sense. Housing market, yes. We all work in the housing market. Market update, no. Housing market report, this week in housing, this month in housing, this quarter in housing, leveraging what the KCM is doing, yes. Housing is the key term, especially if you're doing any of these videos on YouTube or any blogs. Please use the word housing because you get a big boost in views because you did that. Everybody who did market update videos, posted them onto YouTube or did blog posts, the view counts are in the tank because you forgot the keyword housing. Next, last thing is promotion. Okay. As you're getting better and better and better at your ability to explain what's going on with the market and educate and help your community to understand, how this whole housing market and how the housing economy works, and as you're gaining more and more confidence, promote those videos like crazy, guys. So natively take a video, put it into YouTube. Natively take a video and put it into IGTV. Natively put it into Facebook. Natively put it into LinkedIn. Okay. Then if you want to promote, let's say YouTube, grab the link from your YouTube. Then create an email that says, hey guys, I'm covering this big hot topic in the housing market. Click this link here. Check out the latest things I'm discussing. I'm discussing this question, that question, this concern. Enjoy. Have an awesome day. Send. Email with the link to your video from your YouTube channel. So then you get a double bang for your buck. So now we've got email covered, we've got YouTube covered, we got Facebook, we got Instagram, we've got LinkedIn, which is critical. So we've covered the gamut of promotion of the video. I hope this was helpful. It's a long one. Thank you for sticking with it. Let me know how I can help you, what questions you got. Have an awesome day.